Hi, welcome back for our second hour of the 18-hour Shiur. We're going for the longest Shiur in recorded history. We did call, just some tidbits here, we called Guinness to see if they would be on hand to watch our attempt. The funny thing is we're not eligible. There was a professor in India who went and gave a class for 127 hours. Mirz Hashem, maybe we'll try that next year, Lunetta. We'll see, no, don't worry. Anyways, so here we are, our second Shiur that you just heard, that amazing song by Simcha Leiner, Lahagdil Torah V'Yadir. That's an amazing song written just specifically for us this evening to give us some extra chizik. It's a beautiful composition. I was just with him at a wedding a couple of hours ago. I do want to thank our sponsors that are constantly coming in. That first hour was sponsored by Murray Uberfeld over in New York. We thank him for that first hour of sponsorship. Please text us at 41444. That's 41444 to make a donation, to pledge. Text the word Torah. So 41444, text the word Torah, and the instructions will follow. Or you can donate straight on the site that you're watching us on, longestshir.com. If you're in town, you're welcome to stop by here and see some Torah live, and just so you can confirm that this is actually taking place live, and we're having a great time here. The second Shiur tonight is about Imagine, or Lennon, John Lennon's song Imagine, and to discuss whether or not it's compatible with a Jewish worldview, with the Jewish worldview. I want to announce the biggest giver this hour. We'll be doing giveaways the whole night. We'll make it the next 2 hours. The biggest giver over the next 2 hours will win an original vinyl LP from John Lennon's release Imagine. So start texting in, let us know what you got, and we'll send you out a copy of the Imagine. Well, if we decide at the end of this year that Imagine has nothing to do with Judaism, maybe I can't send it to you. Whatever, we'll figure that out. Here we go. Imagine was one of the greatest, John Lennon's finest works. In his own estimate, it was one of his favorite compositions, his favorite works. It came at the perfect time, just on the heels of the Vietnam conflict. And it was written in 1971 in his bedroom. He himself, it said it's anti-religious. So, well, that's it. He said it's anti-religious, anti-nationalistic, anti-capitalistic. So I guess the Shiur could be ended already in the first couple minutes, but we're really gonna get into it, because the reason, look, we don't have enough Sfarim. I could start from there. Why are we starting from here? The reason is because it's a great vantage point, I think, to look at some areas of Judaism that I don't think we explore often enough. In this song, Lennon started by asking us to imagine. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Imagine there's no possessions. I wonder if you can. Okay. That imagine refrain, asking us to imagine, it's the koach hadimyon. In Judaism, dimyon is imagination. Imagination. Is imagination seen as a positive thing, as a great thing, as a good thing, as a virtue? How is imagination viewed from the eyes of Chazal? So I want to start with the golden calf, the Egel HaZahav. The golden calf, Egel HaZahav, has the numerical value 122. 122. That's the same gematria of Koach HaMedameh. Koach HaMedameh is the power of imagination. Why? Think about the golden calf. The golden calf really started as the Jewish people imagining a scenario that did not happen. They had imagined that Moshe had abandoned them. Moshe is gone. It's over. They're no longer here. And therefore, Moshe's not coming back. The train has left town. And therefore, because of that imagined conception, they created the golden calf. They created the Chet Egel. By the way, most of our problems in life are created because of our imagination. We envision that someone is angry at us. We imagine that somebody's trying to get at us. Someone's trying to cut us down. We imagine all these things, and because of those imaginations that we have, because of that, we create a whole story. Most of the problems that we've created for ourselves is a story we told us about ourselves. Oh, I can't do that. I'm lousy at that. I'll never be good at this. That's not my skill set. That's imagination. It's the Egel HaZahav. The power of imagination is so potent and you could use it for such destruction in your life. But, on the other hand, how did the Jewish people fix the Egel Hazav, the golden calf? The Ramban, Nachmanides says, the repair for the golden calf was the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. The Mishkan was this supposed to be like a Beit HaMikdash before there actually was a Beit HaMikdash. And the idea behind it was the Jewish people were supposed to conceive of a building based on the directions that God gave them. Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur, Betzalel, the great innovator, was given an image and he put a Mishkan together. This beautiful edifice that traveled with the Jewish people. And the Ramban says it's supposed to remind them of Har Sinai, the mountain where they received the law. How does this hut remind them of Har Sinai? Because they're supposed to use their imagination. The Koach HaMedama, the power of imagination to conceive of a Mishkan. We use imagination for such beautiful things in our lives. Someone who designs suits for a living, they imagine what beautiful material can do when you put it together and create something amazing. And before you know it, they take that raw material and create something beautiful. That's the Koach HaMedama. You imagine for yourself a better life, a more powerful life, a more empowering life. That's the Koach HaMedama of imagination. Quote to you what the Rambam says in Mor Nevuchim. Rambam says like this. Da ki amitat hanavua umahusa. The truth about prophecy and its essence. Hu shefa shofea mi'et Hashem yisparach. It's a influence that comes from Hashem, be'emtzaut haseichel, through the intellect, which operates hapoel al koach hadvar tchila, ba'achar kach yishpo al koach hamedame. See, prophecy starts by filtering through our intellect, and then it incorporates the usage of imagination. The prophet needs to have an element of imagination. That's interesting to think about, because we understand what it means when you have a dark prophet. Who was a dark prophet? Bilam was a dark prophet. What does it mean he was a dark prophet? What does it mean he was an evil prophet? Here's a man who's getting images from God. How bad could he be? And by the way, the Medrash says, on the pasuk of Lo Kam Navi B'Yisrael Kamoshe, there arose a prophet, there did not arise among the Jewish people a prophet like Moses. The Medrash says, but there did arise a prophet among the non-Jewish people who was as great, and that was Bilam. So how does it mean as great as Moshe? We just had a whole shiur, the last hour, telling us the greatest of all time was Moshe. Now we hear there's a medrash that Bilam, the evil Bilam, the dark Bilam, who spent his whole life cursing the Jews, he's as great as Moshe. What does that mean? So some would like to suggest that in potential, in power, in prophetic power, Bilam was just as great as Moshe. So how did everything get messed over? So the Mariel Diskin has a very nice interpretation and gives us a window into understanding how prophecy works. Prophecy is like a prism. You put light and filter it through a prism. Depending on the type of prism you have, that's how the light is going to be refracted. If someone has a beautiful, pristine prism, the light that comes in will shine in a splendorous and beautiful way. But if somebody has a murky and dark and disgusting prism, that light that comes through is going to shine in a very dark and dirty way. In the same way we can understand prophecy, or Bilam. Bilam's soul was a dark and murky soul, clouded by self-loathing and a hatred for the Jewish people. As the prophecy went in and he was able to receive it, it became refracted through a very dark prism. That dovetails nicely with the Rambam's understanding in Mor Nevuchim as to what prophecy actually is. There's a usage of imagination on the part of the prophet, and that imagination is going to impact the ability of the prophet. The Sefer of the Akedah warns us about the dangers of imagination. He says, Alul me'od lehishtabesh ulaharkiv tzuras she'ena b'metzias. That, by the way, sums it all up. I keep saying each shiur is going to have its one line that makes it all worth it. This is the line. You hear that? Let's say it again. You have to be careful with imagination, because alul me'od lehishtabesh, you could blunder badly, and to imagine things she'ena b'metzias, to imagine things that are not true. That's what I was saying before. You came up with a whole fight that never happened. Oh, that person can't stand me because of this and that. You don't know that. You don't know what's going on in their own life. They went off on you because of something going on with them. Nothing to do with you. That's what he's saying. Imagination is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool. It's the root of prophecy on one hand, and it's the root of many of our troubles on the other. We create the problem, and on the other hand, we also use it as a strength. So to start off, John Lennon, Lahavdil, calls us to imagine. Imagine these types of things that we're not used to imagining. Imagine a world without heaven. Imagine a world without countries, without possessions. And imagination could get your mind to go in all different places, and we need to be careful as we embark on this journey called Imagine. Now, imagine there's no heaven. That's what he asks us to do first. So it's interesting when you think about Shemayim or Olam Haba, the world to come. If I were to ask you where in the Torah is Olam Haba, it's not mentioned. It's not directly mentioned. So in a sense, John Lennon asking us, imagine there's no heaven. We can do that. We can imagine that because you look in the Torah, there's no mention of Shemayim in the Torah. Now, this is the subject of the end of the Gemara in Sanhedrin. There's a great parak all the way at the end of Sanhedrin called Parak Chelek, where it goes through this subject of trying to analyze where are there references in the Torah to Olam Haba and the concept of a next world. So the question in general, why is there no mention? By the way, it is one of the basic tenets of our faith. It's in the Rambam's 13 principles of faith to believe in a heaven. Dennis Prager, by the way, points out that if there is no belief in heaven, then there can be no belief in a just God. Because, well, we'll get to that later. You know, what time is that? Let me see here. I got my schedule. Stick around for the Shiur at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. Hannah's Tears, Understanding God, the Holocaust, and Natural Disaster. I'll raise at that moment Prager's argument about why there needs to be an afterlife. Now, why wouldn't the Torah mention Olam Haba? So Rav Sadia Gaon says the reason why it's not mentioned is simply because Olam Haba is obvious. It's intuitive. See, if I'm just physical, then you have a question. How do we know there's Olam Haba? But we're not physical. There's a soul. And a soul doesn't cease. The concept of something stopping, it's a better point than we realize. Meaning the concept of our body stopping, because physical runs out. At a certain point, everything physical dies. So if that's the case, of course we have a question. How do you know there's something next? But Rav Sadia Gaon says if you believe that you have a soul, and what else animates us if not a soul, then the question doesn't even begin. You understand? The question is only bothering you because you know at a certain point you're going to stop. But if you understand that you're designed with the soul, souls don't stop. Who says souls expire? The whole question is based on the premise that you're biased. You're biased because you think you're physical. But if you realize the root of what you are is really a soul, souls don't need to terminate. It's not physical. It's a beautiful idea. The Lubavitcher Rebbe once said that, love is spiritual. And what that means is when there is love, there's room. A person says, well, how am I going to have room to love God and the person I'm married to? How am I going to have room for both in our lives? And by the way, lahavdil, Islam does mention there is not room for both. God's love is the only love. Everything else is derivative. Judaism does not believe that. Judaism believes when it comes to ava, when it comes to love, when it comes to spiritual, the intangible, there is room for everything. You never run out of space. The Gemara tells us that when the Jews were good to one another, they could sleep on the edge of a sword, the eye of a needle. There's no limit to space when there is love. When we give to each other in intangible ways, in spiritual ways, there is no limit. Love can keep growing and growing. If your love for somebody else is based on a physical object or a gift you give, it's going to run out. It's called a hedonist cycle. At a certain point, you got so excited about this item, it's not a treat anymore. And you have to outdo it. You have to outdo it. You have to outdo it till you hit a wall. You can't outdo the gift you did before. But with spiritual, it's unlimited. You can always give that, and it's always amazing. So Rav Sadia Gaon says, since we're based on a soul, the whole question of ending doesn't exist by a soul. No thing is soul's ending. Soul is intangible. It's metaphysical. That's Rav Sadia Gaon's answer as to why heaven is not mentioned in the Torah. Rambam says the reason why Olam Haba is not mentioned in the Torah is because motivation. What does that mean? If I'm doing everything because of some world to come, then this life becomes insignificant. I just got to get to some reward. I just got to get to something afterwards. And the Rambam says you'll actually treat people differently if you're constantly focused on the next world. If you just want to get to some big prize somewhere, you will rip people apart. You will cut the lines. You will do whatever you need to get there. Says the Rambam, that shouldn't be your motivation. Your motivation should be, I want to be a good person. I want to be close to God. I want to be kind to another person. That's why we do good in this world. That's what the Rambam says. Ibn Ezra has a different answer. Why the Torah doesn't mention Olam Haba. Ibn Ezra says, because the Torah in general refrains from talking about the abstract concepts. Think about it. There's not a lot of abstract discussion in the Torah. The Torah is very aretz focused, ground, earth, land. Moving from this land to that land, possessing the land, dividing the land, conquering the land. Judaism is a very grounded religion. Well, it's a little of both. It's what we call sulam mutzav arza v'rosha magia shemaima. The ladder's planted in the ground and the top is in heaven. The Jew needs to be planted on the ground. Right? Matisyahu lyric, my feet on the ground and my head in the clouds. A Jew needs to live in both worlds. A Jew needs to live in both. The Ran has a different answer. Why the Torah doesn't mention Olam Haba. The Ran's answer is because the Torah only offers you, right? The Torah only offers you those things that are those promises which you can refute and deny. Those things that are in front of you, that you could see, the right now. That's what the Torah speaks of most explicitly. Maral's answer I find fascinating. Maral says talking about Olam Haba is a distraction. Similar to what we said before, that it's earth-focused. But the idea is if everything becomes obsessed about what's going to be in the future, we're less attentive to what people need right now, day to day. Remember we said in the last year that Avram's greatness was that he took care of the Ovrim V'Shavim, the people that would pass by his tent. If you're busy worried about the next life, it takes away from your ability to pay attention to the little things, the small things. That's where real love is shown, in those little actions. Next, the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says the Torah has been promising things all along. Those promises are really references to the next world, says the Vilna Gaon. Meaning the Vilna Gaon is really taking the position of the end of the Gemara Sanhedrin that there is references to Olam Haba. It's not as clear as you think, but all those promises, like for example, Im b'chukosai telechu, if you walk in my statutes, if you walk in my ways, right? That is a promise to Olam Haba. That is a promise to the world to come, to the next life. Okay, so that's why we cannot do away with the Shemayim. We don't believe, imagine there's no heaven. Heaven is a part of it, but where John Lennon may be right is the obsession with heaven. That's not healthy. The obsession with needing to be victorious in some way to get to heaven, yes, that is what Judaism does not look upon. That's what we try to avoid. And therefore, in that sense, we may come to some agreement. Next idea. There is a, John Lennon mentions in the song, let me just pull out the lyrics to the song again. Yeah, he says, imagine all the people living for today. Those that want to bash this song or, say how it's anti-religious in most ways will say the imagine living for today as an apology for hedonism, self-indulgence. Live a little, live today. It's what Achashverosh told the Jewish people. Come on, stop with your Jewish stuff. Let's have some parties over here. You don't always have to be religious. Just a moment. I think he's saying more than that. I think he's talking about not living for the moment in a selfish way, but I think rather what he's getting at is living for today in the sense of being present. And here I do agree with him, and I think he would agree with our tradition. See, we lose focus of the here and now. We're constantly worried about the next deal, the next achievement, the next thing that we can do, or what's going to be with our finances in 2 years from now, 3 years from now. We're busy with our cameras and taking pictures as opposed to just enjoying the moment while we're in it, as opposed to afterwards. That's a Jewish concept, being present. Think about a bracha. What's a bracha? Why do we stop? We take a food in our hand before we eat it, and we stop and we make a blessing on it. I remember once I was sitting in a cafeteria at UCLA, and I had in my wallet a bencher to bench after a meal. And I'm sitting there benching from my wallet, and I remember two Chinese individuals walked over to me, and they asked me if I could bless their wallet as well. They didn't realize I had the bencher in there. I wasn't blessing any wallet. But the idea of a blessing is about being present, being focused, enjoying the moment as it is, appreciating what God has given us. And that's the power of now. Everybody's read the book by Eckhart Tolle, A Good Earth, or The Power of Now. He speaks a lot about being present, and he's gotten a lot of criticism for that because it doesn't leave room for planning or making schedules or anything. But that's not what he means. What he means is that of course we make schedules, of course we plan for the future, of course we need good investments, but the bulk of your energy, the bulk of your thoughts need to be present focused. You need to be right here. You're going to miss your great relationships, you're going to miss your great opportunities because you're worried about what's happening afterwards, what's going to take place another time. And that's the idea of making a bracha, of making a blessing, of being right here. Be in the moment, just appreciate it. Just to sit with an idea. I mean, from time to time, I'll pull out a Lakutei Maran, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, a line from Rabbi Nachman, just to be present with any line. Let's take one line. Let's be present with a line from Rabbi Nachman. Here he goes. He says like this, Da sha'al yedei hanigun shel tzadik, through the tune, a melody composed by a tzadik, hu maila et neshama, he lifts up the soul. Music written by a holy person is able to elevate us, able to bring us up. That's the idea of hearing a beautiful nigun, a beautiful tune from a Rebbe or somebody. The Mozhitz or Rebbeim, one of the Hasidic groups are called Mozhitz. Mozhitz is known for its Rebbe always knowing how to play a violin. They have to be musicians. That's a prerequisite. You know, there are numerous paths to God, numerous tunnels. One tunnel, according to the Kabbalistic tradition, is the tunnel of music. Music brings us back. Music allows us to be present. You got to just think and listen to what you're hearing right now. You're not thinking about what's next. Music is a very present experience. I think we could all use more presence in our lives. Let's go to the next point. John Lennon talks about, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. This is Lennon's cry for anti-nationalism, right? Anti-nationalism. Does Judaism believe nationalism is a value? Where does Judaism stand on this? The Jewish egocentric view is to say, well, the only nationalism we care about is Jewish nationalism. The rest we don't care about. That's not true. Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin says that Jews should cry anytime a national identity is going to be deleted from the world. If a certain group is no longer going to live, is no longer going to be around anymore, that's not a cause for celebration, says Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin. God created many colors in this world, many different parts of this universal flag, and anytime one of it is gone, a piece of that is missing. And therefore, there is an idea in Judaism of valuing people's distinct identities. We need distinct identities. You can't have everybody being the same. The Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi says, why did God create 10 Shvatim, 10, 12 tribes? Why did God create the many tribes? Create one. Because God wanted there to be diversity. God wanted there to be differences between everybody. Is John Lennon asking for everybody to be exactly the same? If so, Judaism does not believe in that for us. By the way, without any sources, Judaism does believe in nationalism. You know why? I'll phrase it in a simple way. If it's a value for us, meaning do Jews believe in nationalism? Of course we do. We believe in nationalism for us. We want there to be a nation of Jews, a nation of Israel. So if it's a value for us, then why shouldn't we want it for others? We should not deprive what we want for others if it's something that we value for ourselves. That doesn't need a source. That's a pashut idea. It's a simple idea. If we value nationalism as a Jewish treasure, then we certainly should value that for other people who hold on to it as well. So Lennon wants to do away with that. I would say we don't share common ground in that idea. He says, you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. I'm not the only one acknowledges there's others out there who believe this way. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And he's calling on a movement to begin. All those who believe like me, let's come on, let's do this, let's jump on the bandwagon. We got to be careful. Before we jump on any bandwagons, we got to first see what exactly we're jumping on. Now, he talks about the world living as one. That's a nice concept. The concept of Achdus. Yaakov at the end of his life. This is this coming week's Torah portion, the portion of Vayechi. Vayechi says as follows, He'asvu ve'agidu lachem. Yaakov gathers together all his children, all his brothers, and he tells them to gather around, sit with us, sit around. Now the words he chooses are He'asvu, which means gather, ve'agidu lachem, and then I will tell you. The holy Regina, Rav Yisrael of Vigen says, one of my favorite Hasidic rabbis, Rav Yisrael of Vigen says, He'asvu means Yaakov is telling them, you'll only get the message of Judaism once you're He'asvu, once you gather together. If you're all fighting with each other, you will not get it. He'asvu va'agidu lachem. You want my message to you? Then you got to come together. If you don't come together, you're not going to understand what this Judaism is all about. It's going to seem petty. It's going to seem to be busy with minutia and random things. You're only truly going to get it when you can come together as a people, when you could come together as one. That's the value of Achdus, the value of unity. He'asvu. You know, he says two words. He says He'asvu, gather together, and then he says He'kavtzu, which is really the same thing, It means that he was telling them, don't fight. One thing to come together, but when you do come together, don't fight. You think about how many quarrels. You know, the Jews don't have enough issues that sometimes we are our worst enemy. Sometimes we have to fight amongst each other. Am k'shei oref, a stiff-necked nation, we're told. And we got to think about that, what Yaakov told his sons. Look what Yosef tried to do. Talk about this week's Parsha. Yosef turned to them, and he sensed that they were so nervous. The moment their father's gone, Joseph is going to turn on them. And Joseph says, I know what you did to me, but I don't blame you, because it was decreed from God. God is the one who decided that I should be in that pit. God is the one who put me in the bedroom of the wife of Potiphar. God is the one who had me thrown in a dungeon beneath Pharaoh's chambers. God is the one who ultimately took me out and rose me up to power. I don't blame you. I have no ill will towards you. Yosef was trying to hold the family together. So certainly when we talk about Achdus, we certainly keep that as a value. Just because we believe in Achdus, in unity, it doesn't mean that we can't tell each other what we feel. That's a misnomer. We think part of unity is not to share our feelings with another person, but that's not true. Look at what happened. Yaakov gathers them together, He'asvu va'agidu lachem. And then after he gathers them together and tells them not to fight with each other, He'kavtzu, don't have any machlokes, then he rips into each one. Why is he ripping into each one? Why is he telling them all off? You got to work on this. You got angry too quickly. You did this. It tells you that Judaism does not believe that unity means no one could say anything to each other. No one can. That's a good a relationship is one where you can feel free to share what you are feeling. The great Rav Kook says there's no mitzvah to rebuke your neighbor nowadays. Hocheach tochiach. You know why? If you see someone committing a sin, we're not supposed to really tell that person off, except under certain circumstances. Why not? Says Rav Kook, because you first have to have v'hafta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Then you could tell them off. You first have to have the relationship before you could judge it. Who are you to judge anybody before you have a relationship? You don't know them. You need to first get that relationship going, then you could say something to them. And that really shows you see, you think it'd be the opposite. If you're so close to somebody, how could you ever tell them anything? You can't tell them off. No, it's exactly that. It's once you have the relationship, you're able to give that advice. You're able to give that encouragement. It's once you have the v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that's when you could have the hocheach tochiach asamisecha. That's you're able to give the rebuke. And that's exactly Yaakov. Yaakov had this relationship where he could then turn and tell each of them what he truly felt. What he truly felt at that time. I saw a beautiful insight from Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, just passed away this past year, the Gush Rosh Yeshiva. Points out the following. Let's go to Memtet, Pasuk Kavchet, Perek 49, chapter 49, verse 28. So it says, Kol Eile Shiftei Yisrael. All of these tribes of Israel, Shnei Masar, there were 12. Zot asher diber lahem aviem. These are the ones that their father spoke to them. Vayevarech otam, right? He blessed them. Ish asher kabir chato. Each one got his own blessing. Beirach otam. He blessed them. So Rav Aaron Lichtenstein points out, you see this balance, this juxtaposition. There's this vayevarech otam as oto, meaning it shouldn't have said oto him. Meaning what? Once they were together as a group, then he could talk to them individually. He could talk to them as individuals, as particular tribes, one at a time, and give them their own message, and tell them what he felt. Tell them what he felt. Let's continue. So we talked a little bit of that one idea about the world living as one, the Achdut. We're not against the concept of Achdut. We believe very much in the concept of unity. I want to say a little bit more about the concept of Achdut. I turn to Yecheskel, right? The book of Yecheskel, Ezekiel, and in Yecheskel, chapter 37. Psukim 16 to 24, Tes Zayin. Let me read you from Yecheskel. Vayihi dvar Hashem Elai lemor, and the word of God came to me saying, Va'ata ben Adam, you, son of man, ka'ach lecha eitz echad, take one piece of wood, and write on it liYehuda, u'lebnei Yisrael chavero. So take one stick and write upon it for Yehuda and for the children of Israel. Then take another stick and write on it for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Yisrael. Join them together, join one to the other, and they're going to become one stick in your hand. And when your children will say, Kasher yomru elecha bnei amcha lemor, and when your children will speak to you saying, Halo tagid lanu ma elach lach, they will ask you, what is this? Daber aleim, you should say to them, Ko amar Hashem Elokim, Hine ani lokeach et eitz Yosef asher ben Ephraim. I take this one and I put it next to that one, and v'hayu echad biadi. It will be one in my hand. The stick of Joseph, the stick of Yehuda, they will become one in my hand. V'hayu ha'eitzim asher tichtov leim biyadcha leineim. It'll be there in front of your eyes. V'daber aleim ko amar d'Elohim hineni alokeach et bnei Yisrael. I will take the Jews from among the nations. V'kibatzti otam misaviv. I will gather them from around, and I will bring them on their ground. And I will make them a great nation, one nation, goy echad ba'aretz, b'harei Yisrael, in the mountain of God, mountain of Israel. Umelech echad yelakulam, they'll have one king. V'lo ye'od lishnei goyim, they will no longer be two nations. They will no longer be split. They will no longer be cast around. They're going to walk in my laws, and they will keep them. The prophet Yecheskel speaks of a time when the two sticks will be joined together as one. The prophetic words where Yecheskel, Ezekiel, consoles the nation. And the Torah tells us that after the dramatic reunification of Yosef and his brothers in Egypt, after all these years of envy, after all these years of hatred, right, it appears that would be a Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim, that what happened to them will be foretelling of something great that's going to happen to the children. The gathering of the Jewish people coming into the land of Israel and the reunification of the people. In the 10th blessing of Shmona Esrei, when we daven. We say, V'sa nes lekabetz guliyosenu v'kabtzenu yachad me'arba kanfos haaretz. We'll raise a banner and gather the exiles from the four corners of the earth. So Rav Shimon Schwab, there's a great book I recommend called Rav Schwab on Prayer. Rav Shimon Schwab says that the first gathering mentioned, right, it says, V'sa nes lekabetz guliyosenu, raise a banner to gather our exiles. Again, we say that in Shemona Esrei. So Rav Schwab says that first gathering is talking about a physical gathering. Think about the time that Herzl went around picking up Jews wherever he could find them. He said, come back, let's go, let's get back here. But the second v'kabtzenu, because in Shemona Esrei it then says v'kabtzenu yachad me'arba kanfot haaretz. The second v'kabtzenu is the reunification of the Jewish ideology, of our belief system. To be one people, not just physically we gather in Israel as a gathering point. That's one madrega. But we have much more to go. There has to be a time when we gather together as far as our belief in Hashem, our belief in the holy nature and the role of the Jewish people in this world. Let's take this back to Yecheskel. Throughout time, throughout history, there's always been two models of Avodas Hashem, two models of serving God. The approach of exclusive devotion to Torah study and all what you would put in their spiritual pursuits, and the approach of combining Torah with greater involvement in the world. And there's been examples of both throughout history. Rav Soloveitchik was the great YU Rosh Yeshiva, the grandson of the Brisker Rav. Rav Soloveitchik says that was the root of the machloket, of the struggle between Yosef and his brothers. Yosef's approach to the service of God, to the service of Hashem, was to infuse the mundane world with Kedusha. Yosef worked day and night. This man built up Egypt. He had an economic strategy. He worked in the government. He said, you take the world that you're in and you imbue it with sanctity. By the way, the Shem Mishmuel, the holy Sogachover, says that's why you put the Hanukkah menorah, which symbolizes the light of Torah, outside the house, demonstrating that the light of Torah has to illuminate the world. It must go out there. Judaism is not something to be hidden in the home. There was a statement made by a Reform rabbi once, Rabbi Leib Gordon, where he says, be a Jew in the home and something else in the world. We don't believe that. Judaism needs to be out there, infiltrate the world, needs to be part of the world, enhance the world, make it better, create a great message for the world to hold on to. Yosef's role as a trusted manager, a dream interpreter, an economist, a orchestrator of history, while at the same time remaining loyal to Jewish tradition of his father's type. That was Yosef. What was Yehuda about? Yehuda, they believed in a more insular approach to Torah study, focusing on less involvement with the world around them. That's what Rav Soloveitchik believed. Some of the tribes, like for example, Levi, Yisachar, they would dedicate themselves to Torah study. And that would be part of the central foundation for the transmission of the Torah. Rav Soloveitchik says this merging of Yehuda and Yosef was the merging of these two different approaches to Torah. Both have been valid approaches and both needed to come together. The story of Yecheskel, of the coming together, is the ultimate gathering, the ultimate coming together of those different worldviews. John Lennon, lahavdil, back out to John Lennon, speaks about nothing to die, to kill or die for. That's a level, that we should have nothing to kill or to die for. So first of all, yes, that would be great. We would agree. If there is nothing to die for, we're better off if we don't have to kill anybody, and we're better off if we don't have to die. But it cannot denounce the role of Kiddush Hashem. There is a mitzvah in the Torah of Kiddush Hashem, the obligation to sanctify God's name. It's a pasuk in Vayikra, Perek Chafez, V'niskadashti betoch b'nei Yisrael. My name will be sanctified among Israel. Just as refusing to die when necessary is a chil Hashem, dying to defend the faith is a kiddush Hashem. Now, there are many conditions that limit when a Jew would do that. For example, the big three: avodah zara, shvichus damim, and gilui arayos. Right? For idolatry, murdering somebody else, or an illicit relationship, a Jew gives their life for those rather than commit them. But in other circumstances, a Jew is asked to live rather than die. For example, if a random person comes up to you and says, "Here, I want you to break Shabbos," you break the Shabbos and you don't give up your life. The reason for those three mitzvahs, why murder, avodah zara, and gilui arayos, why those three? So the Sefer HaChinuch says murder is because logically, why is my blood redder than somebody else? Why is my life more valuable than somebody else's? Who am I to determine that? And therefore, I can't kill somebody else if somebody asks me to. What about adultery? What about some type of forbidden relationship? The Torah compares that to murder, tantamount to murder. If you look at Dvarim Pasuk Chaf Beis, Perek Chaf Beis Pasuk Chaf Vav, 22-26, there it compares the forbidden relationships with that of murder. And idolatry, what could be a greater desecration of God's name than showing your disloyalty by saying, I reject God in favor of some other deity? And that's why those are the big three. They apply in all circumstances, all situations. Now, what about if you wanted to give your life in an area where Judaism does not ask you to give your life? Let's say, you know what? This person asked me to wear shatnez. Shatnez is wearing wool and linen. Or somebody asked me to plow with a horse and a donkey at the same time. It's prohibited in the Torah. You can't plow with a horse and a donkey same time. Let's say somebody says, here, I got a gun. I need you to wear shatnez right now. I need you to, you know what? I want you to plow with a horse and a donkey right now. So you're supposed to, I hope if that ever happens, you'll just plow with the horse and the donkey. But what if somebody says, you know what? I'm so loyal, I want to give up my life and do it. So the Rambam in Hilchas Yesodei HaTorah says that in cases where you're not required to give up your life and you do it anyway, you're going to have to give an accounting for your life because that was not allowed. Most Rishonim disagree with the Rambam and say that while you're not required to give up your life, it's certainly a great Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification if you do. There's two very interesting caveats to that fight. Let's repeat the fight. Rambam says, we're talking about a case where you're not supposed to give up your life. Guy puts a gun to your head, here, plow with a horse and a donkey at the same time. Okay? You want to give up your life. According to the Rambam, you were forbidden from giving up your life. According to most Rishonim, you're not allowed to give. According to most Rishonim, you are allowed to. You're not required to, but of course it's a great Kiddush Hashem if you do. By the way, just as a tangent, not the water, but I'll tell you in a second. Just as a tangent, the Radvaz has a tshuva. Radvaz, Rav David ben Zimra, was asked, 15th century, was an Italian posek, a Spanish posek. He was asked about whether someone is asked to cut off their arm to save another person's life. If you're asked to cut off your arm to save somebody else's life. So let's say they can control the situation and it's not going to be a threat to your own life. But if you know that if you sever your arm off, that person will live. And you know you'll live too. There's a medical team on hand to help you out. Would you be obligated to do it to save a life? So saving a life is one of the greatest values in Judaism. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, whoever saves one life, it's as though they've saved the entire world, which was the tagline on the poster for Schindler's List. So it is one of the greatest Jewish values. So maybe you could argue that you'd be obligated to cut off your arm to save another Jew. The Radvaz says it can't be that the Torah makes you do that. It can't be. It would be great if you did, but it cannot be the Torah made you do it. Why? What's his source? His source is the verse, Darchei Noam, v'chol nesivosei shalom. The ways of the Torah are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. It could not have asked you to do something that you would have to do something like this. Obviously, no one should ever have to be in that situation. Many great people have given up their lives for others. Think about the university. I forgot which university was it. I forgot. But it was about 10 years ago. Lev Librescu was a professor in university in the Midwest. I forgot where. And there was a gunman who came into the room, and he stood in the door protecting his students, knowing that his life would be taken. He was a survivor, Jewish survivor, stood in the door of this university, and he saved their life. Now, again, back to our machlokas. The machlokas we're talking about, where are you obligated to give up let's say you give up your life in an area where you're not obligated to. Rambam says you're not allowed to do that. The other Rishonim says you don't have to, but it's praiseworthy. So the Kesef Mishnah, Rav Yosef Cairo, one of the commentaries on the Rambam, Kesef Mishnah says that even according to the Rambam, who says you're not allowed to do that, nevertheless, if you're an Adam Gadol, if you're a great person, and you notice that this particular mitzvah, which you're asked to violate, is become so weak in the eyes of the generation, you can give up your life, because you'll get others to strengthen this mitzvah because of it. Understand the exception? Rambam says you were never allowed to give up your life. Kesef Mishnah says no. Even the Rambam would agree that if you're a big symbol to the generation, an Adam Gadol, and you can sort of lead a rallying cry for this mitzvah, you should give up your life and still do it even according to the Rambam. There's many halachas that are different for someone who is an Adam Gadol. Do you know that if somebody is drowning on Shabbos, so of course you save anybody drowning on Shabbos, but not only that, the Rambam goes ahead and says it shouldn't be the average Joe who goes to save the person when all bets are equal. You have even the greatest tzaddik go and save the person. What do you mean? You would have thought, you know what, that guy is such a great person, he's so religious, don't let him break Shabbos. Send in Phil down the block there. He's not so religious anyways. Send him in to save the person drowning. No, the Rambam says the opposite. The most observant, the most religious, the most pious person, he should throw everything to the side in order to save this person on Shabbos, because such is the power of a symbol of an Adam Gadol. A second caveat here is mentioned by Rav Moshe Feinstein. He says that the permit, according to most Rishonim, to give up your life, even if it's not required to do so, is only if the person is ready to give up his or her life before committing any sin at all. But if he's only strict as far as one sin in particular, he can't all of a sudden give up his life for it. If this guy happens to be somebody who's careless in general, he can't suddenly wake up today and say, today I want to be a Jewish hero. I want to be a Jewish martyr. He can't do that out of the blue. Okay, but bottom line is, lahavdil, we do agree with Lennon. We'd rather have nothing to kill or die for. It's a better life, nothing to have to kill each other for. But to think that there's nothing holy in dying for something, that we disagree with. I mean, you read Rav Kook's writings in his Orot HaMilchama, in his Lights on War. We'd rather avoid war, but when war does happen, there is a holy element at times in the necessity, in its necessity, in its wake, and when it does happen. When it does happen. To share a few more ideas, time is running out. He talks about the following idea. He talks about imagine no possessions. No possessions. No one owns anything. So he's advocating a socialist concept, the redistribution of wealth. Where does Judaism stand on that topic? Where does Judaism stand on that? Right now, those who may be feeling the burn, right? Bernie's been talking a lot about being the socialist candidate, and he's proud of it. Where does Judaism stand on that? So, if you look in Sefer Vayikra, Perek Chaf, it lays out Israel's social welfare and economic system. And it basically was a capitalistic economic system where private individuals own property and small businesses controlled the means and production of goods and services. You have evidence of what you call takanos and gzeros. Let me explain the difference in halacha of takanos and gzeros. when we say that there is a gzeira, a gzeira, they're making a gzeira. A gzeira is to keep people religious. There's a gzeira that if you don't, lest you do this because you may come to do that. Gzeira is to preserve frumkeit. What's a takana? Takana is something else. A takana is an enactment for social concerns, for the social welfare of the people. While Judaism believes a sort of a fluid economic system, I will admit that there is a part of Judaism that has a lot of takanas. Takanas are a redistribution to make sure that there is social welfare. I try to make a list of some takanas. Here are some examples. There needs to be a guarantee of public trees from where anybody is allowed to pluck. The Gemara mentions there needs to be a highly regulated system of weights and measures. There needs to be an intricate system, the Shulchan Aruch goes on at length, an intricate system of a protection of tenants. There were charity taxes in items that were distributed to the poor, meiser, given out. There were practices to limit competition, right? Hasagas gvul. There was common rights on real property that was owned. So to say that Judaism believes in a laissez-faire form of government, that's not true. The extreme of capitalism, Judaism does not believe in. There is regulation. There are many halachas that express this concept of regulation. But at the same time, Judaism does believe in private ownership, private collection of wealth. There's a mitzvah to give meiser to tzedakah, a tenth of what you have for tzedakah. The Chafetz Chaim says, but for someone who has an extensive amount of wealth, they should go beyond the amount of meiser. Now, one is not supposed to give more than a fifth of their money away. The Gemara says you don't know in the end how much you're going to need, what's going to happen to you. However, the Chafetz Chaim says again, you can go way beyond that if you have a tremendous amount of wealth. What Mark Zuckerberg did a couple weeks ago with, 98% of his stocks to give that away, the Chafetz Chaim would say, while that may seem to go against the Gemara, it does not. The Gemara did not speak about a case when somebody has that tremendous amount of wealth. It didn't apply in such a case. So it's complex. I wouldn't say John Lennon's song is a treif song per se. There are elements of in that song that are preserved by Judaism, seen as values. The ideas of achdus, the ideas of presence, of living in the now, of being right here and where we are. But on the other hand, there are components of it that are certainly stuff that we do not agree to. The idea of abandoning nationalism, the idea of abandoning what may seem as religion, the idea of no heaven. There is a concept of lo b'shamayim hi, of halachas not decided in the heaven. But that's not what John Lennon was talking about, and we'll get more into that in our second to last shiur. Second to last shiur is the one at 4 p.m., Fight Club, what it means when rabbis and the Talmud argue. Again, we're doing this 18-hour shiur. We're going for the longest shiur in history. We're doing this to raise money for Jewish education. We appreciate your donations. You're doing a great job. Keep it coming. If you want to donate online, you stay on longestshir.com. You could donate there. Or you could text in your donations by texting us 41444. Text the word Torah. Again, 41444. Text the word Torah, and the instructions will come up on the screen. We thank you and we appreciate everything you're doing. Let's keep learning. We got 16 hours left. Stay close by. It's going to be a great rest of the evening. Tomorrow, we got all day learning. Lahagdil Torah v'yadir.